Good morning. Today's another one of our first fives. Today, we're looking at Mark chapter 15. Now, I've got to be honest with you. One of the realities for me is maybe one that's similar to you. I feel like whenever someone attacks me verbally or they say something about me, I have to defend myself. And to be honest with you, the more I read about Jesus, the more I realize how un-Jesus-like that actually is. Jesus so often let his life speak. Not that he didn't speak or address things, but he was way less worried about what other people thought of him or other people said things about him than who he actually was. In fact, what I find is Jesus really doesn't defend himself at all. He gets asked questions at different times when he's confronted by different issues, but I find it especially challenging when I look at what happens on his last day before the crucifixion. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through the scene and talk about why I think for many of us, we might be better served to not defend ourselves or even defend our faith sometimes. We'd be much better served just to live it out and to love people as Jesus models for us. So here's what happens. Mark 15, verse 1. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin reached a decision. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Are you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. Yes, it is as you say, Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of? But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Goes on to there's a scene in which Pilate tries to give people a chance to choose Jesus over Barabbas, but the chief priests, the elders, the teachers of the law, the Sanhedrin, they push for Barabbas. And so they say, well, what do you want me to do with Jesus? Is Pilate's question to the crowd. And they yell, crucify him, crucify him. And so we're moving on a little further. Verse 16. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns, and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, Hail, King of the Jews! Again and again they struck him on the head with the staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. Jesus mocked and beaten, and his response is silence. Going on ahead, jumping to verse 33. I'll jump to verse 31. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but can't he save himself? Let this Christ, this King of Israel, come down from the cross, that we may see and believe those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. In the next scene, Jesus cries out and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? I want to challenge you to go read Psalm 22. The end of that psalm, though, is this idea that it has seemed as if God has forsaken him, but in the end, God has redeemed him. And that's really, we think, what's happening here in Jesus' words, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's a reference to the psalm in which he knows, in the end, God will redeem him. And into this, it says, this one I think is so powerful, verse 39. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus heard his cry and saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. So this centurion is radically changed. Why? Because he's watched all this stuff. He saw this guy get insulted. He saw really this mock trial that wasn't really real. He saw Jesus before Pilate, who could have said all kinds of things, but he said, it's as you say. And then Jesus is mocked in front of all these soldiers. He doesn't retaliate. He doesn't defend himself. He just stays silent. And finally, after he's been mocked and ridiculed and even beaten, he's there on the cross. He doesn't say, oh, what about them? In fact, we know from another gospel, he says, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. So in the middle of his being beaten and accused of something he didn't do, Jesus' choice is this, Father, forgive them. And so this centurion who sees all this stuff says this, man, this guy really must be the Son of God. Because how else could someone live this way? And here's the challenge for you, and especially me this day. In the middle of accusation, in the middle of people's words that sometimes we don't like or are not even truthful, are we willing and able to say, Father, forgive them, instead of defending ourselves? Because that, I think, is the mark of deeper faith. And it's a challenge for you and I today. May you find that because of what Jesus has done, because of his death on the cross and ultimately his resurrection, and because of the gift of his Holy Spirit, that you and I can begin to live lives in which we respond, Father, forgive them, instead of, oh, you don't know what I've really done, or you don't know what I meant to say, or instead we can just know who we are, whose we are, and we can rest in the love of Jesus. And we'll catch you next time for another First Five.